Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another episode of the Frozen Sodium Throne podcast with Accolonn. How you doing, Accolonn?
I can't complain, power back on for a few hours. So I'm sitting down doing the podcast and going back to fucking darkness. It's glorious.
Now, let me tell you, if there's someone that can complain, I think that someone is you. Like, literally, Accolonn is sacrificing his, remaining 2 hours of power with his load shedding so that we can record this podcast. Because last week was a pretty busy week when it came to World of Warcraft and Diablo news. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure we can talk about my story because there's just so much stuff to talk about World of Warcraft. Might have to push it to the next podcast, I feel like.
I mean, yes, I feel like things are ramping up again, but that's usually the case in the gaming industry. First half of the year is, generally speaking, boring, sort of nothing going on. And then usually around this time is where all of the game companies start.
And all of that stuff, everybody starts ramping up let's go. So I got a question for you because you're probably more inside this than I am at this point. Mm-hmm. They haven't officially announced the BlizzCon this year, have they?
No.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to confirm. I didn't think that they had.
Yeah. No.
You don't think we're getting a BlizzCon?
No, I think they actually said that the next BlizzCon is 2023, I think. Right now, I mean, I think they used the Xbox and Bethesda game show to basically showcase all of the games in progress, I guess, that they have. And then they also had that unveiling episodes. Overwatch had its episode, and World of Warcraft had its episode, and Diablo Immortal had its episode, and Arclight Rumble that no one fucking talks about had its episode. So I think Blizzard is sort of inching towards a world where BlizzCon no longer really is a thing that people expect. Just because, the culture within the company have changed. The origins of BlizzCon really was, and this Mike Morhaime himself actually said, this is why they started doing BlizzCon, is that opportunity for the developers to see the people that they serve, to actually be able to speak to the people that they serve.
So you're like, now people just want to say bad things to us, so we don't even want to look them in the eye.
I don't even think it's that. I think, because you have to understand, very few people that have that go online and write, fuck you, have the guts to do that in real life, right? The vast majority of people IRL would never fucking do that. So I don't think that's necessarily their bother. I think the biggest bother for them is the fact that, well, they're no longer superstars, and I think they know that. I think they know that the superstar status is gone. They've destroyed that. But more importantly, remember, they used to believe that they serve the gamers. I don't think they believe that anymore. The current culture within Blizzard is more, this is a business, this is our job. We bring out games, you buy the games, we make money. So why would we put up this massive show for what? It doesn't need to be that. No other gaming company really does that.
Actually, there are a couple of them that do.
But
you have TennoCon, for instance, for Warframe. They constantly do that stuff, if I remember correctly. And there used to be other ones, but I don't remember all of them at this point.
I would say right now, the ones that I know of is PlayStation does one. Xbox obviously does their thing.
They haven't announced it this year yet.
No, but I think also for a lot of companies, it is sort of we have the pandemic that just finished, and economic situations around the world doesn't look too hot, so a lot of companies might just go, never mind, not this year. PlayStation, I think, I remember reading an article where they said it's not going to happen because they don't have much to announce yet. The games that is in progress right now isn't ready yet to be showcased. If I remember, that could have been last year, but I'm pretty sure it was somewhere this year that I read that. Final Fantasy does it as well. They have the Final Fantasy Fan Fest.
The Fan Fest, yes.
Yeah. But one thing that is true for almost all of the companies that still do that is more towards the indie-esque kind of companies, companies that really do still try to make games for their community. And therefore, those expeditions or conventions is a way for them to reach out to the community. I don't think that's the case for Blizzard anymore.
I was mostly just curious if we would potentially be seeing like some Dragonflight and some BlizzCon this year or something like that, because obviously, for those of you that weren't aware, Dragonflight got not really a release date, but like a release window where they're like, hey, we're releasing this thing in 2022 and you can pre-order it now. And there are so many things I want to talk about, these pre-orders and stuff. But let's actually start by going for 2022. I think both of us made videos talking about this already. And it's like, my take on it is there are two scenarios, basically, as my take on it. And that is, one of the scenarios is a scenario where Blizzard's just like, hey, look, we just don't care. We just don't care. We're just going to milk them. And, there's going to be whales that are going to do it. And I mean, they've proven, at least that point, if that is the scenario, they've proven that it's true. Because, like, people have been pre-ordering this thing in droves, which, again, that's a topic that I want to get into much deeper. But, that's one of the scenarios. The other scenario could be, like, Ian did say when they had their little Warcraft episode and stuff, it's like, hey, we're much further ahead in development than you think. Which, that could be justified due to a lot of things. I don't think that is the case. But, at the end of the day, let's just assume, like we talked about last time, okay, if he's telling the truth and they're actually like much more advanced than they are, could it be that it is because of the fact that they don't have to do all of those stupid systems and stuff like that, like the system for the covenants and the system for the domination raid, and the system for the mounts in Zareth Mortis, and the system for this and this is, if they don't have to do any of that, could it be that actually takes up a significant portion of development time? Naturally, they're still doing the talent trees. Could it be that those are easier to do than all of the other stuff because maybe it doesn't interlink as much? They're not having to do 4 separate stories that people have to experience. Maybe it's a much more linear expansion. And maybe, them just focusing on the fundamentals could lead to it just being an easier to develop game. And therefore it's like, hey, no, it's ready. We're going to be launching it sometime this year. Or, those are the two scenarios that I see. Now, scenario number 1 also includes the potential for them to just like, delay it and nobody cares, which is something I want to get into. But I want to get your take on it first.
All right. So I want to go back because I always like looking at history to sort of get a baseline for what we can expect. So BFA launches in its beta. The world is done. The world exists. You can go to every single one of the zones. All of the quests have already been implemented. In fact, you could level almost from the first week. You could level all the way to max in the beta for BFA. Most of the dungeons were already complete. People were testing out the first raid. The things that weren't there was the Azerite armor.
Interesting.
Island expeditions took quite a while to get in. Azerite armor wasn't in the game until a month before the official launch of the game. So we got to beta test Azerite armor. I remember still making videos before we saw Azerite armor. I said, this is a really cool system and it's got a lot of potential for being really good. And I would explain to people what they could put into these Azerite pieces to really make it pop. And then we got our hands on the Azerite pieces and I still said, well, we haven't seen the Azerite pieces for the raids yet. These ones blow.
Dude,
but
that
might just be
you
because
were on
it's
some copium.
ones.
Come on, you were on some copium.
Well,
it's like,
yes.
You're one of those WoW Andes that was going like, it's going to be better in just, it can be better. It can totally be better.
Yes, that is true. I was still at the time suckling at the teeth of Blizzard's copium. 100%. But also, gearing or leveling gear has never really been interesting. It's never really had anything. And that was legit the only Azerite pieces we got to see was the one from the leveling and also some of the dungeon stuff. And I still said, well, maybe these are the baseline ones because you could see that there were rings that could be expanded on, right? But they weren't filled in the gear that we got to test. And I said, well, maybe these inner rings are the ones that's more passive, more basic, not really care about. And then the outer rings are going to be the big ones, the ones that sort of work the way that artifact weapons work. We never even got to test those until the game went live. It wasn't until it was live that we finally got to see what the Raid Azerite pieces would actually look like.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't ready. It couldn't be tested at the time. So Shadowlands, same thing. The world is ready. All of the covenants are there. Most of the covenant campaigns are not done yet. Torghast wasn't done until, basically Torghast was completely changed. They had Torghast perfectly well in the beginning, and then they decided to do a complete rework of Torghast.
It's so
suggesting.
It's so weird what they did with Torghast that, you have streamers that played Torghast back before they changed it, and they said that it was actually really cool. Like, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And then they changed it.
I saw videos. I couldn't get into the beta that early, so I actually got into the beta the week after they changed Torghast. That's when I got into the beta. But I watched a lot of videos from people doing Torghast, the original 1.0 version of Torghast. But this would suggest to you that Torghast was barely ready when they launched the beta. So they basically gave people access to their first rendition of Torghast. Most of the covenants weren't fleshed out. The Maw was basically more empty than what it ended up being. Like, there was very little to do in the fucking Maw. And they also had, like, weird things. I remember the very first quest to go into the Maw, once you hit max level during the beta, you would need to collect 20 souls from the Maw. These 20 souls in the Maw could only be collected from this giant soul forge that would spit out souls. And basically you had like 100 people standing there, all frantically clicking on trying to get a soul. Because it needs to spawn, then you need to tag it, and then you can get it. So that was their first idea of how these souls were going to work, and I still made a video saying this is going to be a fucking bottleneck of epic proportions. Yeah. I think I called the video actually a new kind of time gate because it would take people weeks just to do the first Maw quest. Shit like that. So God. The game, all of the systems around the game, the legendaries wasn't ready at the beginning to be tested. It wasn't until much later in the beta that legendaries finally became testable. So again, the base game was ready. Literally from day one in the beta, it was all of the systems that was tacked onto the game that basically weren't ready. They would just continuously have to change it. Systems take time to develop, specifically to balance. So you can develop a system pretty quickly. It's, does the system work in the greater arc of your game? And that is not obvious right from the beginning.
And here's the interesting, and by the way, I wanted to address something that someone said in a comment that I keep interrupting you. I just want people to know, Accolonn specifically asked me to interrupt him because otherwise he'll just keep talking forever. Oh yeah. So that's why I do it. All right. Because I know that some people might think that I'm trying to be rude or something. It's like, no, we talked about this. He asked me to interrupt him. Otherwise, I'm not going to get a word in. But it's like what it seems to me.
Look, I'm used to streaming on my own, right?
Yeah.
So I talk for 6 hours at a time on Twitch. So if you don't interrupt, I will talk the whole fucking 2 hours easy.
And I don't even have to say anything. There'll just be a podcast done. But so according to your description, it does seem that the systems do tend to get implemented much later in the beta and alpha cycles. This is something that I usually don't do alphas and betas because, I already have very little time and I don't want to spend that little time testing the alpha or beta version of a game, particularly when I have so much other content to be working on, right? And not to mention that then when you actually get into the game, you're like, well, I'm doing the things that I already did. I even felt that a little bit during New World, where I did a little bit of testing for the beta because I was just curious. Then I got into the game. It's like, I'm doing the exact same thing I did during the beta. It's like, right? So I like going in fresh. It's just a better experience. But anyways, you've tested, you actually tested this stuff out in betas and alphas, and it does seem like the systems that most people end up not enjoying as much do tend to come in later. And on top of it, if they're coming in later, it means that they don't get as much testing done. Whereas the rest of the world, like you were saying, is usually already prepared. So it, in a way, it kind of makes sense that they'd be able to pump out this expansion faster than the previous expansions because they had just so many more systems implemented, engagement systems implemented in them.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the truth. The two systems that the game has, right? So Dragonflight is just a game. It's a world.
Yeah.
There's quests in the world. You get to max level. There's dungeons, and then there's a raid. The two systems. So first and foremost, let's talk about the dungeons. The dungeons that will be available for Mythic is only going to be 4 of the 8 dungeons that launch at the game. So they need to make sure that 4 of the dungeons are perfect for Mythic Plus. The other 4 will just be dungeons that they've already done Mythic Plus for. That was literally designed for Mythic Plus.
Not necessarily. Because like they said they're not doing the Shadowlands dungeons. So they're not doing those at the very least. And I don't know which one was the ones that were added to Shadowlands near the end. Was it BFA dungeons? No. They added dungeons from another. I think it might have been Legion dungeons.
Yeah, they've done Legion dungeons.
So if
they did say that
if they add BFA dungeons, I guess that's less work because BFA was ready for Mythic stuff. But if they're adding dungeons from further back, that involves the work of converting those to Mythic.
Yeah, but technically speaking, they can do BFA, they can do Legion. Those are all Mythic. They were designed to be Mythic.
I think they said they weren't doing Legion. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they said they weren't because those have been going on in Shadowlands, and so it wouldn't be a fresh experience. I'm suspecting they might pull from Mists even. Maybe.
I mean, Mist is going to be the only one that
would require additional work.
They did say that they're not going earlier than Mist of Pandaria.
Yes.
So they did say nothing before Mist of Pandaria. Warlords of Draenor might not have had Mythic Plus, but it did have the challenge modes. So in a way, it was designed with that replayability already in tow. So it is possible for them to just switch those over to Mythic.
Actually, Draenor are the ones that are active there now because people were talking about Grimrail Depot, and now is Draenor, right?
Yeah, that was Draenor.
So
I'm not currently playing, so I really don't have an idea. But the point that I'm trying to make is, remember, those dungeons just need to be adapted for Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
They're already made. Like, the dungeons already exist. They're already mostly balanced. It's just adapting them to a Mythic Plus setting. The raid, it's going to be a raid, you know. Yeah. There's not much to it. But then you have the two big systems for Dragonflight, which is the open world system that we have never seen in World of Warcraft before. Because they now have a team dedicated to making outdoor content. And then we have the Dragonriding system, right? Which is also a first
I think there's another system in there, which is the talent system.
Yeah, but the talents we'll talk about in a minute because it deserves sort of its own category here. But just in terms of those two, the Dragonriding and then the open world system, these are systems that you don't necessarily have to have everything ready at launch. You just need to have some things ready. You can very easily, a month after launch, add more levels to the Dragonriding system because no one's going to be level 50 with Dragonriding in a month after launch, right?
I don't know about that. There's a lot of crazy people in the WoW community, let's be real. They will grind themselves into a fine paste in order to get something.
There's a cap. I do think there's a cap to the amount of Dragonriding skill that you can get every week.
Yeah.
So it's not like you could just no life it. Yeah, well, yeah, it is time gated, but I've always said I don't mind time gating as long as time gating makes sense. So if you just put an arbitrary gate here that makes no sense other than, well, fuck you. Like, for example, the Covenant is a good example of this, where you would gate 3 quests every single week and then it would just end. Whether the end made sense or not. So sometimes the quest would just be like, well, there's no quest now, come back next week. And it's like, but why? What's going to take a week? Like, am I preparing for some invasion? Are you preparing for an invasion? What are we doing? Like, why are you waiting a week? So
the NPC is tired. The NPC is like, listen, my face is tired. I'll talk to you in about a week. All right. Come back next week.
That's annoying because it breaks the story. It breaks the flow. So those things are annoying, but time gating is something that all games do because there's no way that you could not have that unless it's a single player game and people can just play at whatever speed they want. So I don't mind time gating. I do mind time gating when it's just arbitrary and doesn't matter. But those two systems don't have to be finished. They can be added upon, as time goes on. They just need to have their foundations ready. and then people will be happy.
I'm not sure if they don't need to be finished, or because like I feel like you need something meaningful there, because at the end of the day, when this, due to the fact that Blizzard, for stars, they're being a little bit brazen about this release date, right? They're going like, nah, dude, we're releasing this year. You can pre-order now. Let's friggin' go. Dragonflight's coming. Get ready. This is going to be an expansion. We're going to go back to Azeroth. Like, they're being very brazen about this, right? They're being cocky, which in a way, it almost gives you a little bit of hope, because like, you know, Blizzard being cocky is like, oh man, are you guys really going to deliver the goods after all these after these string of failures that we've seen from you? Now you're going to deliver the goods. So it's like, I kind of feel like with them being as brazen as they're being, the system can't just be like, oh, there's potential here. Like, I feel like the player base needs to get into the game and then we're like, oh no, this is actually really cool. And if anything short of that, anything short of the player base going into the game and being, this is cool, I like this expansion, is a failure. Like, if somebody just goes in the game and be like, I guess it's an expansion, I don't know. I guess that is a bit of a failure.
What I mean when I say it doesn't have to be complete, let's imagine that they want 20 jumping puzzles in the game, right? You don't need 20 at the start. If 5 is ready, you release those 5, and then first patch, you release another 5 or maybe 6. Because it's going to take people some time to get through the jumping puzzles. Let's say you have a bunch of world bosses that let's make a number, 100. You want 100 world bosses that spawn.
That's
but
a whole
not
lot.
100 is ready. You know, you don't have 100 ready yet. Well, so basically you say, well, okay, let's release 30, have them on a rotation, and we'll just throw everything that is ready into the open world so far, so that people have a lot to keep themselves busy with. But, you know, we do have a lot that isn't ready yet, so we'll release those as they're ready. And Blizzard have already shown that they're no longer as adherent to the patch system, you know, where only the 0.1 patches can have content in it. Blizzard will absolutely add content to a patch if they feel like more content's needed, and that content is actually ready.
That would mean a really agile development process if they're able to do that.
Dude, I personally believe that's how it should be done. I hate the patch system. I believe that patches is more often than not a bad thing, because if something is ready now, right, and we're not talking about something that is very much tied to the story like a raid or something, but if something is ready now, why aren't you releasing it now? Why aren't you giving people access to it? Look, my $15 this month is going to be the fucking same as my $15 next month. So just give me content. If it's ready, give it to me. Instead of this arbitrary, you have to wait 6 months in order for content to be ready. And then it's like a boatload of content all at the same time. And then for 6 months, there's nothing new. Whereas it would be much better if we were drip-fed content over the course of, say, 6 months. Every month or two, you get something to keep yourself busy with, So yeah, I think Dragonflight actually allows them or allows that a little bit more. I don't know if they'll go exactly that route, but you did bring up talents, which I would love to get your thoughts on.
In terms of what? In terms of like compared to previous systems that we had, like I think talents are way better than the stuff that we had. Because like for instance, the whole point of when you were doing the Legion artifacts, like, oh my God, look at this powerful weapon that I'm working towards. And then BFA starts, it's like, yep, this is all going in the trash. And you're just like, oh dude, but I've been working on all these cool abilities. And now my character feels like garbage. Like, how are we getting like a downgrade of our characters? It's, it feels bad. Whereas like if you get a talent system and you can expand on it for a while, like I think that makes some amount of sense. And there's even like stories that you can come up with, like for instance, right? You develop your talent across, they were saying that this could potentially work for 3 expansions, because we all know that talents can't last forever, right? They're going to have to change and come up with a different system. But you could do something where it's kind of like a Zelda, right? Because at the end of the day, the stories need to make sense. But whenever it comes between choosing between gameplay and story, you should always choose gameplay. That's my opinion. I think that you might side a little bit more on the story side, but I think that I kind of feel like, okay, the story needs to make sense, but if there are some sacrifices that we need to make the gameplay more fun, I think that's cool so long as the story still makes some semblance of sense. So let's say 3 expansions from now, it's like some kind of cataclysmic event happens and, we lose part of our power as the chosen one, the champion, whatever. And then they reset the skill trees or something. But, we still keep some of the things that we had, but they change the trees around so that, power creep, stuff like that. I think that something like that is cooler because at least it's going to last you for another 3 expansions as opposed to it being a throwaway system of here's your sword, here's your Azurite gear, here's your, I don't even know what we were doing in the Shadowlands, your conduits or whatever the crap. Yeah.
Yeah. This is conduits, legendaries, all that crap.
Yeah. So I prefer talents, not to mention that I've never liked the Mist of Pandaria. They didn't miss, I think, when they swapped it over to where it's the 3 columns where you pick. I hated that. I looked at that thing and I'm just like, dude, this is some garbage. I don't know who came up with this idea. We had the old talents. They were so much better. Why would you do this? And well, it's friendlier for new players. I mean, it's like, dude, come on, man. It's
Who gives a fuck?
How much? There's not that many new players coming into World of Warcraft, and that's a problem in and of itself. But let's face it, the people that are still here, we prefer a little bit more complexity when it comes to the talent system, even though there's obviously going to be the people that are going to be like, oh, I'm going to just follow the route of the meta. Not everybody does that. I used to raid with a weird build in my warrior that gave me more power to my intervene because that allowed my group to advance further in raids because I'd be intervening the main tank and we'd be sharing the damage because the healers were slacking. And it's like, whatever. There are things that you can do to compensate for the shortcomings of your teammates. And people are going to be like, why don't you just get rid of them? It's like, well, come on, because raiding is a social experience. You don't need the best players in the world in order to raid. You can do fine with players that are suboptimal, so long as there are a couple of players that can carry them. And ultimately, to me, raiding is more of a social thing than necessarily I want to raid to get the gear as fast as humanly possible. It's like, I like raiding and I like seeing people make mistakes and I'll make fun of them for it because that's a fun social experience. People just forget that nowadays.
I mean, we can talk about the misconceptions that exist within World of Warcraft when it comes to things like raiding. But talent-wise, I love the talents as well. I actually think that talents do have the ability to stick around for a very long time, probably longer than 3 expansions.
I mean, sure. I'm just saying that if they stick for 3 expansions and then they do some kind of a revamp, but it's still a talent system that's going to last for another 3 expansions, I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's okay. So long as they don't go oh, we're going back and now instead of talents, we have these 3 little columns and you can pick. It's like, why don't you send me some crayons with my additions so that I can eat them as well?
I mean, so the thing with talents is it's very difficult to overpower someone when it comes to talents because you can only pick that many, right? So talents by their very nature have the ability to keep growing and you can still only have X amount of talents. So you can add very powerful abilities to the talent tree all the time. And specifically if you no longer have the borrowed power systems.
I was just thinking about Ardent Defender back in Wrath of the Lich King for the Paladins. It's like when you're saying, you can only make somebody so overpowered. Ardent Defender was pretty friggin' busted. Dude, it's like every 2 minutes, you're invincible and it's passive. It's like, wait, what? It's like if you were to die in the next 2 minutes, you just don't die. And instead you get 30% of your health back and damage reduction. It's like, excuse me. So yeah, you can make broken stuff, but I'm assuming that the team has learned a little bit more about that, even though I still think that Warrior is going to be ass at the start of the expansion as always. But
I mean, obviously the team has grown. They've changed quite a lot, and probably they are better at balancing nowadays than what they used to be in the past. I know people love to make a meme out of the balance, but whenever you look at the damage charts, the damage is not actually that far out of whack. It's actually relatively close, but sadly people look at parses and parses everything. So you have to take the only the people that's at the top of the chart and no one else. But with that said, now that you no longer have borrowed power, all of those borrowed, because think about it, every single borrowed power system is effectively a talent in the making. So you no longer need borrowed power systems. Instead, you take all of those ideas that you had with the legendary items, for example, and their actives, the conduits that you created, and you put all of those into the talent tree instead. You can do fewer now because it's no longer a borrowed power system. It is something that will persist. So with conduits, for example, we got how many fucking conduits and how many legendary
Jesus
items,
Christ.
all with active stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But now you can maybe add 3 talents per spec rather than having to worry about like 12 or 13 per spec, just because it's a new system and people need a lot of new options. 3 talents every single expansion, not too shabby. The tree will eventually get really fucking large, but hey, Path of Exile showed that a large tree is not a fucking problem. So clearly it doesn't matter that much. But also I think there's a psychological reason why talent trees feel better than the talents that we have right now. And that is just, yes, there is going to be a cookie cutter. And yes, there's going to be right and wrong answers. But the fact that there are many choices make people automatically feel better. It makes you feel like you at least had some semblance of control over what your character and class
Makes
becomes.
feel like you can do
Even
a
if you
build.
didn't.
And the other thing about the talent system that I think is friggin' amazing is the fact that you can basically have different talent loadouts for different things. So, I'm going to do Mythic Plus, so therefore I'm going to equip my Mythic Plus talent. I'm going to do rating, therefore I'll equip my rating. I'm going to do world content. There's a world content loadout. I just hope that they don't limit it, because you can see them doing something like that, like limiting the amount of pains that you would have, and then like, hey, you wanna buy a pain, bro? Dude, I can sell you a pain for real money or a WoW token. Like, I don't think they'll do that, but they can. I mean, they've definitely shown with Immortal that like they don't give a crap about how you feel about what is fair and what is not fair in monetization. But I hope that they don't go that route.
I don't see them doing that because that is definitely a more free-to-play element of gaming. And I think if they did that, because that would be similar to what Star Wars does. You have 3 action bars, and if you want more, you have to buy them.
It's so hilarious. It's like, you want an action bar, bro?
That you can see how free-to-play games would do that. If a $15 a month game did that, people would be up in arms. So I don't think that. I also don't see that as a very good moneymaker, because the vast majority of people are basically always only going to have 3. They're going to have their Mythic Plus one, their rating one, and their PvP one. And for most people who don't PvP, raid, and dungeon, they're maybe going to have a cleave one and then maybe a single target one.
What about
most people?
What about like people that play multiple specs? I kind of feel like, for instance, if I was playing Warrior, I would have I'd have a Fury spec, I'd have an Arm spec, I'd have a Protection spec for going out in the world. Because like I don't really play Arms and Fury that much, so I'd have one for each of those. But then for my Prod spec, I'd have like 3, maybe even 4 different specs depending on the situation. So you're talking just straight up about 7 different specs that I would want to have.
Yeah, but for those that have already said that every single spec has its own pages, its own panels. So, even if you were to limit it to 4 panels per spec, people will still just make sure that they have all their builds inside the 4, and not to mention the fact that you can actually change talents on the fly if needs be, so you just need to go to a town and you can change the talents there, or any rested area, really. So I don't see that as a good moneymaker. It more just the downside is far greater than the upsides there.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe some people will buy an extra panel, but a lot of people will complain about the fact that you have to buy a panel, So it might be just that thing where Blizzard goes, yeah, it's not really worth it for us to do that. And most people are so used to only having like 3 specs. The 3 pages will probably be enough for most people anyways. I'd say 90%. The only people that will probably complain about is like the 5% of Mythic Raiders.
It'd be me.
And then the 5% of PvPers. They complain because I remember when we raided Mythic, you would have different talent builds literally fight to fight. Sometimes depending on the job that you're given in the same fight, you would change out your talents because, well, you need to do something different now. Whereas most heroic raiders don't do that, right?
Yeah.
They have one build for all bosses, so that's good enough for them. So yeah, I personally think that talents is the one system that is gonna take. We're probably gonna come down to the wire on this one.
Yeah.
Because Blizzard, basically, these talents are also not quite talents. I don't know. Have you looked into the talent trees at all?
I haven't, but I've heard that they have some of the abilities that you used to have back in Legion, some of the abilities that you had back in BFA. Basically they're grabbing all of the borrowed power systems and sticking them. Well, not all of them, but like probably the ones that people find more meaningful or iconic, and slapping them on a talent tree.
It goes further than that, because they don't only have the borrowed power talents. They literally have your abilities that you use right now inside it.
Oh, okay.
So in order to have an ability like, say, for example, Thunderclap, that's a talent.
Is it actually a talent? Is that confirmed?
I don't think we have seen the warrior yet, but if I look at the DK, like the DK trees,
yes,
all of your abilities. So basically, your ability book, so your skill book, as it were, now contain your more nuanced things. So things that no one would take.
That actually makes me even more excited about that system, to be honest, because like one of the things that we can talk about World of Warcraft a whole bunch is how much there's bloat in your bars. There's tons and tons of bloat on most specs in the game. So removing some of that bloat and putting it back in the talent tree, I think that is a very good idea. Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. Right, I agree with you 100%, but I'll give you an example of this. So, say, for example, Farsight that hunters have, that ability to basically put your beast and look through your beast's eyes, like far, far away. That's going to be baseline, because they know that no one would ever pick a talent Farsight. No one's ever going to take that as a talent. So that's baseline. But Aim Shot is in the talent tree.
Aim Shot, that's the one that gives people the Mortal Strike debuff, right?
Aim Shot is like their big DPS thing. And they have 2 charges of it, and sometimes it can proc insta, other times it can't. Other times it has like a massive long cooldown cost time on it. But that's going to be so if we go to Warrior, the Thunderclap one. Thunderclap is going to be a talent. If you want Thunderclap on a specific boss, you'll pick that talent, and now you have Thunderclap. If you want Shield Bash, it's a talent. It's not baseline. So as a warrior, you don't have any baseline offensive abilities. All of the abilities are in the talent tree. So you basically decide what you want on a specific fight based on what you need for that fight. And then the later talent tree tiers. So as the talent tree gets deeper and deeper, that's where you get into the more borrowed power stuff. So this is where you get
we used to have stuff like that back in the day. For instance, if I remember correctly, Devastate used to be a talent. If you didn't put Devastate, you wouldn't have it. You'd have to do the Sunders instead. So I think that's fine. I think that's like I said, I even think that's cooler than just having all of your abilities baseline and then just, having a bunch of bloat in there. Like, I hope that they actually trim the fat on a lot of these classes and make them less bloated, because I feel like people need to be focusing more on gameplay, and that's another topic that I want to get into later. But yeah, I like that they do that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. One of the reasons I really like that is basically you now have the class is a blank slate, and you build it the way that you want to play it, without being forced. This is the 5 abilities that you'll always use. And then the talents basically just change how those abilities act, with some talents giving you an extra thing. So for example, for Warlocks, they have one row where it buffs your agony, that your agony can now get to 20 stacks, or it makes your corruption eternal forever, or it gives you Siphon Life as a new curse. Right? So those are the 3 that you can take. One of them gives you something new. The other 2 just changes what you already have. Whereas now, Blizzard is basically saying, right, do you want Curse of Agony? Well, then pick it in the talents. Do you want Corruption? Well, pick it in the talents. And then later on, I've only gone through the DK one, but basically, you'll very early on, say, pick, for example, let's say Thunderclap. And then later down the road, there's maybe a talent that now increases the range and damage of your Thunderclap. So if you pick Thunderclap, you might go, well, I'm actually going to make a build around Thunderclap, so I need this ability because I want to increase the damage of my Thunderclap. You know, and then maybe later on even you get a choice to lower the cooldown of Thunderclap by 30 seconds. And you go, yep, as a Thunderclap warrior, I need
Thunderclap
to take this
spam, dude. I just want to press one button, Thunderclap nonstop. That works for me, dude.
Exactly. You know, it provides players with a lot more, I feel like, agency to say, right, this is the build that I went for. This is how I want to play the build. Whether other people are going to like me playing the build this way, well, that's up for discussion, right? Yeah. But this is how I want to build it. Do you remember Swifty?
Yes.
Swifty's one-shot macros. That's basically what this is going to do again. You are going to see people running around with insane builds where they've basically put all of their power into one ability wherever they could, and everything else just serves to empower this one ability so they can get
the synergies,
Yeah, and I love that. You know, it's fun.
It's fun to see those crazy playstyles, which is something that, you know, you can do now with like specific legendary items and a bunch of other stuff that you can use, but you're not really using the talent trees to do that, not realistically, because so very little things change with the current talent trees that it's whatever. But yeah, I think that I agree with you on the topic that, you know, the talent tree is going to be the most important system that they need to figure out. I think that the wyvern riding is also extremely important because, you know, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be upset over the fact that, oh, I can't use my flying mount. And it's like, to those people, I'm like, hey, man, cry harder, bro. I don't give a crap about your flying mount. It's like, I don't, like I said, I don't even like flying in MMOs because I think flying in MMOs is usually boring. So I think that Blizzard taking the, you know, the Guild Wars 2 thing and making it into their own, it's like, I think that's cool. Like, dude, if it's a good system, I think that'll even be better. I hope that it is so good that it's like you can still go back to the old mounts, but it's more efficient to do wyvern riding. I hope that they do it. But it was like, you need to be more active, but if you want to be like AFK Andy, press numlock and auto run to where you want, you can do that too, but it will be faster if you use wyvern riding and actually stay active. I think that'd be a cool thing to do, because then you'd still see people using it.
Yeah, they've already explained from some of my sources close to the company. I no longer have sources inside the company, but I do have a couple.
You've been blacklisted. Nobody likes you over there.
Yeah, basically. But according to my sources, the flying right now for the Dragonriding is about double the speed of normal flying.
Good.
So you fucking rock if you do it well.
Good.
Obviously, if you do it well. So
I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of potential fan of the Dragonriding system, just because, and I think we've spoken about this in the past. I love to look at anything in a game as additive or subtractive. Anything that you add to a game will either add to the game or it will subtract from the game. Now you might say, but Accolonn, what the fuck? If I add something to the game, it's by its very nature additive.
No, it's not. It's not
always, right? Because just like you reacted there, it's very possible to add something to a game that actually subtracts so much from the other systems in the game that it comes out to a net loss. The game is actually losing a lot more.
To give you an idea, like to give you an example from another game, which is a game that I played a lot, it's Monster Hunter World Iceborne. They did something where they've added something that, in my opinion, took much more away from the game than it added, which is there was a final boss that they added to the game, and the final boss gave you an armor so powerful. Like, one of the things that you do in Monster Hunter is you come up with these mixed sets, which is almost like mix and matching a talent tree. Basically, each armor piece has a certain set of skills, and you're like, okay, I want this armor piece with this set, this. And the armor from the last boss was so powerful that there was no reason for you to equip anything else, like, forever. It was that level of power. Just like, it had tons of sockets that you could put gems in. It increased all of your skills by +2. It did so many things that I was just like, well, one of the things that I would do all the time would be like build videos. After that boss came out, I was like, well, I guess I don't have to do build videos anymore, because every build video is going to be 4 pieces of this armor and 1 random piece to complete whatever skill you want. That's it. And that was essentially what it became. Every single meta build was 4 pieces of that boss's armor, sometimes even 5 pieces of that boss's armor. And that was it. And, that is an example of a system that, in my opinion, is a subtractive system. But interestingly enough, a lot of people in the player base loved it because they're like, well, it's the final boss. I'm going to be done with the game. I don't care. And I'm just like, well, okay, I guess the rest of us that still care and wanted to continue play and do mixed sets and stuff, well, screw the rest of us, I guess. It's like, it's over.
I mean, so this is one of those examples where people will love it because, yes, but over time, it will actually lead to a net loss of player base.
See, the problem there is because it was the last boss. People after that, a lot of people just stopped playing the game because it's ultimately a game that's not a live service. So after that, people, they got their thing. They murdered a bunch of monsters using that set, and then they're like, okay, I guess I'm done. So in a way, it's kind of like almost okay, but I would definitely consider that to be a subtractive system.
It definitely is, especially for people that want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
It would be the same for something like Elden Ring. Elden Ring is also a game that, technically speaking, is designed to be played once. So once you've killed all the bosses, good luck. But then you get the hardcore fans that sort of, I want to kill all the bosses with every single possible build in the game. I know I don't play Elden Ring, but I play Cyberpunk, for example, and one of the things I do with every single playthrough of Cyberpunk is I go for a different build. So my first build now, the build that I'm going through now, is Ninja. So I'm actually doing a samurai build now. And it changes the game for me. Not everyone will do that. Most people played it once, saw the story, and was like, yeah, this is great. Thank you very much. I'm going to leave now. But if they had sort of armors in the game that just, this is the best armor in the game, that really destroys the replayability of the game, because every single time you play the game, this is the armor you're going to go for, right? Because it's the best in the game. Now, in MMOs, it's actually far worse, because something like flying, on the face of it, seems like a good idea. Why wouldn't you allow people to get to places faster so they can enjoy the things that they enjoy? I never thought it
was a good idea. I was just like, nope, this is terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, philosophically speaking, there's nothing wrong with flying.
A quality of life.
Yes, but then you start to think about things differently. An MMO is a living, breathing world. Flying literally removes you from the living, breathing world so that you can skip all of that and go to the part of the game that you actually enjoy. The issue there is you've come up with a fix to a problem without fixing the problem. The problem is that the world is so boring that people don't actually want to be in it. They want to skip most of it so they can get to the things that they find fun. Whereas if you wanted to fix the problem, you have to ask, well, why is our world so boring? Like, what is it about our world that annoys people? And then fix that instead. Now, I'm not saying that flying should be removed, but this is why I actually like the Dragonriding system.
I'll say it for you. Don't worry. Remove flight from all MMOs. Get rid of it. It's over. Goodbye.
I actually think the Dragonriding system is the perfect way to remove it, because now it becomes a system of its own. And you can actually build systems around that system. Because Blizzard already said they're going to do that.
If you know what you're doing when you're building a system like Dragonflight, and I'm not saying that I believe that Blizzard will be doing a great job. I'm just, assuming they're able to do it. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but assuming that they're able to do it, I think that is a much superior system, because like we've talked about in one of the first episodes, I think I mentioned look, traversal is one of the most ignored aspects of MMORPGs and just like video games in general. People just don't pay enough attention to traversal. Like, why is it so cool to web sling in Spider-Man? Because a team of people thought up, how can we make this cool as hell and engaging for people to just like web sling through a city, and they came up with it. Why is it so cool to, jump around in Gravity Rush? Because somebody thought, a team of people thought up, what is the best way for us to make traversal work in this gravity thing. Same thing for Xenoblade Chronicles X and a bunch of other examples. Like, they think up this stuff and how does this work for traversal? A lot of video games unfortunately don't. And in my opinion, World of Warcraft hasn't thought about its traversal pretty much since, I don't know, vanilla.
I mean, World of Warcraft solved its traversal problems with flying. They basically brought out flying so that they didn't have to fix it. I'll give you a great example of a simple thing that you can do that actually ends up being quite incredible. Cyberpunk. I love bringing up that game because it's such a hated game, but most people completely sleep on it. Like most people sleep on the potential of that game. But Cyberpunk 2077, I have replayed now 3 full playthroughs, and I'm now busy doing 100% playthrough of it. So I'm in my 4th playthrough of Cyberpunk 2077. I still don't fast travel in the game.
Because you can encounter like events along the way, right?
I can encounter events along the way. Just the physical driving your bike and trying to do cool moves as you do it, like trying to skip through traffic and get a really cool turn or do a really beast jump to somewhere, is phenomenal. And fast travel would effectively remove all of that, because you just click on a thing and you go to the next point. This is when you have traversal through world building that people just want to be in the world. Red Dead Redemption is another great example of it. You can fast travel in Red Dead Redemption, but you'll miss I want to say 60% of the game.
Yeah, you'll miss a ton of stuff for sure.
Oh yeah, because a lot of the time you'll just be running and then you just see this white dot on your mini map sort of light up and spark. And that's a quest now. That's a thing that you need to go talk to a guy that maybe there's like a shooting competition and the guy wants you to shoot a bunch of birds. Or one of the most eerie ones that I got in Red Dead Redemption was I saw this light on my screen and I turned and there's a tree with like a lantern burning and a guy's dismembered body just sort of hanging in the fucking tree. And it turns out you're hunting a serial killer. This isn't part of the main storyline. This is just like
something you run into organically while you are traveling the world. Yeah, which definitely emphasizes the importance of traversal, which is why I feel that they really need to figure out the Wyvern riding needs to be 100% out the gate, because if people don't instantly adopt Wyvern riding, there's going to be a problem with the expansion, I feel like. And I think that within that, I think it's also important that with the open world team that we're talking about, I think it's important for them to figure out a couple of dynamic events kind of like that as well, that people can organically run into as they go through the world. And it needs to have enough of a diversity where it doesn't feel like, I got the, I got the event that requires me to go get bear poop or something like that. Or it's the same event that I did 5 minutes ago. Right? It can't be a system like that. It needs to be something that feels more organic, and it needs to feel meaningful as well with the rewards and stuff. It can't be like a daily. It has to be something like an adventure, I feel like.
Yes, exactly. This is actually something that I've been hammering on with Archeology. I feel like Archeology was such a missing opportunity, a missed opportunity for Blizzard.
It was so
to
bad.
Basically turn the player into Indiana fucking Jones. If you're an archaeologist, you're Indiana Jones, and you should go on tomb adventures and tomb scenarios and cave diving, and ocean diving.
A good example of what Archeology should have been is, I don't know if you've done, I don't know how much content you did in BFA, but there was this one place where you would go on this tomb of something, and there was an Alliance guard that goes, because I'm Alliance, there was an Alliance guard that would go with you. And that was that guy that was at the start of BFA that's kind of like, I don't know, he's a guy with 2 swords or whatever. You meet him right at the start. I forget his name. But there was this... I don't remember now, but yeah. Yeah, there was this... It wasn't even a dungeon. It was like a scenario that you would go on with them. And there would be monsters that you'd have to kill and stuff. But it was just like this long instance scenario that you would go on. And essentially you were kind of breaking into this treasure room, which had elementals guarding it and whatnot. And I was like, this is what Archeology should have been. Should have been quests like this. Optional quests that would be like this. And people would be doing Archeology nonstop.
Imagine if in Archeology, imagine if Archeology married sort of treasure hunting. So if you're an archaeologist, you can get fragments from any mob that you kill that gives you a map, right? So we're sort of marrying a couple of different games here. But for those of you that haven't played ESO before, In ESO, you get these map fragments, and you can look at the picture of the map, and it will show you a landscape picture, like something that was drawn, and then it will give you a little red circle for where you might find this thing, whatever this thing may be. And then you basically, it's up to you to go all over the zone that this thing dropped in and look for that exact skybox of, the tree being exactly at the right place and the waterfall being exactly at the right place, and then heading to where this thing may be. Now, imagine if Blizzard did that. You're an archaeologist. But archaeology also has its own talent tree. So you can eventually get it to where clues in the world will reveal far more than just what you see. So you can actually use a specific insight skill to gain more insight into the picture that you're looking at. But then once you get to this location, it turns into a bit of a scenario. And again, there's talents here that determine which scenarios you can do based on your skill. So maybe there are map fragments that you find eventually, or maybe at the beginning, but you can't actually traverse this cave yet because you haven't unlocked the lasso skill yet, where you take your whip and you throw it around a rock, and now you can climb up a rock. So you don't actually have the ability to get up there.
Metroidvania elements in it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically you give the player an entire game around archaeology. It almost becomes its own game in a way for people that really love that sort of play style. And yes, you don't have to have many of those, but at least a few, I feel like will give players some playability and also make archaeology actually feel the way that it's supposed to.
Think of it like this as well. If you take into consideration that you're not doing borrowed power anymore, and the effort that we kind of like examined at the start of this podcast that it appears to take for them to do borrowed power, then potentially you can take a lot of those development resources and create some of this horizontal content, which I think would actually make a whole lot of sense.
Oh my God, yes. Can you imagine? Because that is basically taking treasure hunting in any video game.
And it's like, we're talking
to a whole new level.
We're talking just like specifically about treasure hunting. You could have another aspect of it that would be about just adventuring and going like on something similar to a Torghast, except it's not mandatory. It's a Torghast that you go on, and it's just this concept in Final Fantasy is called the deep dungeon, and you just go through it. And you just do the deep dungeon until whatever floor you're able to make it. And, you might get some cosmetics out of it. You might get a mount. You can even put like old mounts in there, which is essentially what Final Fantasy XIV has done. And that's another thing that you can put in there that is horizontal, completely optional. And it's, again, completionism content for people that want to go do it. And more importantly, it gives people access to potentially items that, let's say, for instance, how Asmongold always wants to go get his stupid sword, like in Mogushen Vaults or whatever the hell it is. Instead of that, he could potentially get that sword as a reward for doing a deep dungeon. Which one do you think you choose? I mean, he'd probably still go do Mogushen Vaults because he's that's just the way he is, right? It's like, let's go do another sword run, boys. But it's like, imagine you could do that in a deep dungeon instead. You have more gameplay elements, more interesting things to do there.
I mean, people would love that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You could go do deep dungeons for collectionism. You could go do this adventure system that we're talking about for collectionism. And you can come up with different things. Like, again, they're introducing wyvern riding. Do something with wyvern riding that can be its own little adventure, like a wyvern riding instance or something where you have to fly in a very specific way. You have to do like a speed run type thing. And here's another one. You can do wyvern riding races. Like, how is it that
they're already doing that, by the way.
They're doing wyvern riding? Okay, thank God.
I was about to say Dragon riding is happening. Racing is happening.
I was
it's
about
part
to
of what
say,
the open world team is working on.
Have I been calling it wyvern riding? This is Monster Hunter, because like there's a mechanic in Monster Hunter called wyvern riding.
I mean, technically speaking, a dragon and a wyvern is very similar. So wyvern riding, dragon riding doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But, there are so many things that you can do that don't have to be around Mythic Plus or raids, which is ultimately, the big thing that people want to do. I think that those things are still important, and you should definitely put resources on them. But, there are other things that are also important for people that don't just want to raid. I also go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to blow your mind, because this is actually a system that I've been thinking about for a while that Blizzard should absolutely add. Again, you have a talent tree that allows this. farming. We have the farm in West of Pandaria that's been doing absolutely nothing. Now imagine if you had the ability to put your farm anywhere in the world.
What is the farm in Pandaria? I have no idea. I didn't play
in West of Pandaria, you had this farm where you could basically grow cooking ingredients.
Oh, okay.
And every day you would go there and do a couple of dailies. And
it's kind of like the Draenor, whatchamacallit, garrison system where you'd have like herbalism stuff and mining stuff. Yeah.
Yes, but the farm was a lot more, I think, involved than what the garrisons ultimately became. Because in the garrisons, you would just eventually go
and you just
collect the stuff, you know. Yeah, whereas this was actual cooking ingredients, and you needed the farm in order to cook a lot of the things in the game. Now, imagine if Blizzard brought back farming, but this time they take it actually another, to the next level. Farmers do grow the ingredients for cooking and also a lot of the ingredients for alchemy. If they choose to, they can choose to grow whatever they want. So if you're an alchemist, you might want your own farm, or you're going to buy a lot of the items that farmers put on the auction house because those things do not grow in the open world. They grow because farmers merge them. So in other words, farmers can experiment. This is all part of their talent tree. This is how the system is played out. A farmer can take 2 herbs, merge them, and then plant them, and that grows a herb that alchemists will use, in their potions. But then you also give farmers the ability to go out and capture animals to breed. So different animal species throughout the world is captured, brought back to the farm.
Kind of like hunter taming. The system's even already in the game.
There you go. So kind of like hunter taming, you bring those animals back, and now you can start crossbreeding them. What comes out there is mounts. So you now have the ability for players to make their own mounts, and then you have a racing element to the game.
I'm just thinking of you trying to crossbreed a bear with a chicken to get a chicken bear.
Hey, you can fucking, obviously there would be limitations to what you could actually make in the game.
There needs to be some limitations. We're not playing God here. You can't crossbreed a bear with a chicken. Imagine a bear with wings, dude.
Blizzard already have the system in place, right? They have that build your own mount thing in Zereth Mortis. Yeah, so this time you're just replacing it with breeding your own mount, and this is what farmers do. Again, farmers can specialize. So everyone can have a farm, but one farmer might specialize in mount breeding, another farmer might specialize in actually cooking ingredients, another one might specialize in alchemy ingredients, and they will build their talent tree.
This would all be completely optional. This is all completely optional content, not mandatory, does not give you power. It's just like you'll have some players that will choose to do that. Some players that will choose to be like special adventurers and whatnot. Some players that will choose to go the deep dungeon route. And you can even have some rewards that kind of like cross over a little bit into those activities and whatnot. But again, it's just like a bunch of horizontal systems that don't require people to be on this constant friggin' power grind, which just makes things harder for everyone, including the developers, because they have to keep, numbers need to keep going higher because everybody just cares about the number going higher.
You see, the trick, as far as and there's a lot of pushback because a lot of players don't understand it. A while back, I made a video where I effectively said, the secret to a great MMO is to cater to as many players as possible. And a lot of people push back on this. A lot of people said, actually, no, because if you cater to everyone, you don't do anything well. The secret to a great MMO is to just focus on a couple of things and do those great. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Because everyone says, just look at Shadowlands, look at BFA. It failed because it tried to cater to so many different people.
Shadowlands and BFA tried to cater to Mythic Plus and raids, and that was about it.
Exactly.
And PvP. I keep forgetting PvP because I don't do PvP, but and PvP.
But people will point to Torghast and be like, yeah, Torghast is a great example of Blizzard trying to give content to casuals. And it's like, no, it's not, though. Because Torghast being tied to Mythic and Mythic Plus means that it's not a casual system.
Yeah.
The secret to a great game, especially with MMOs, because here's what people need to understand. Games is about a niche. All games is about a niche. Why does Monster Hunter work? Because there are players that love fighting bosses,
Yep.
that love the interaction between having to dodge, using your abilities correctly, learning that skill, and then taking it out. Why is Elden Ring and Dark Souls so popular? For the same fucking reason. People love that challenge, that level of exploring the world, being completely free to do so. But it's not going to be for everyone.
Nope.
There's not 100% of the gamer audience that's going to play Elden Ring or Monster Hunter. It's a niche.
Yeah.
MMOs, so single player games have the ability to focus on one niche, do it really well, and pull it off. Why? Because a single player game, it's going to end. MMOs don't have that luxury because MMOs are always on. It means that they kind of need people to keep playing. Just focusing on a single niche is not going to keep people playing.
I think that there's just one thing in there, which is I'm not a huge fan of trying to cater to everyone. I think you should be trying to cater to everyone that likes MMOs. Not necessarily you don't want to cater to people that want to play Candy Crush. Like you don't want those people playing WoW because that's actually a bad thing. It's like you want to cater
within reason.
Yeah. You want to cater to people that like the MMO genre and that like that, just being in that world and doing different activities. What you want to do is just give them as many activities as possible. And I feel like that is definitely one of the things that 14 is doing right. Because, there are people, and you can tell that there's a lot of people that went from WoW to 14 because one of the first complaints they have is like, there's not enough content. It's like, I've already done the raid. There's nothing left to do. And it's like, there is so much content, whether you want to go grind relic weapons, whether you want to do like deep dungeons, there's a million different things for you to do. The thing is, not all of them give you power. Some of them give you cosmetics. Some of them just give you the experience of a quest, like Hildebrand. Hildebrand is just the experience of having a fun quest that you go on and you experience that crazy, wacky story that happens in Hildebrand. And it's like, this is content that exists just for the sake of existing, which would be the same way that I would talk about the Indiana Jones style content we're talking about, the deep dungeon thing that we're talking about. It's just content that exists for the sake of existing. You don't have to do it. There was something that actually Belar brought up in his recent podcast, I think, where he straight up said, players, if Dragonflight is just a fun expansion, there's a high chance that a lot of World of Warcraft players will actually not like it because they're not used to just playing a game for fun. They're used to being excellent at completing tasks. They're like, okay, here's my list of tasks that Blizzard wants me to do. Let's go complete those tasks. Boom, done. And it's like, if Blizzard doesn't give them that list of tasks, I think there's going to be a lot of pushback from the fan base, which I think is going to be weird. We'll see how that turns out.
So if Blizzard just makes a fun game, yes, the current players, because this is actually a great segue into what you wanted to talk about, which is the pre-orders.
Oh, yeah.
And the sheer amount of pre-orders. And people seem to fail at realizing that the pre-orders were always going to be great in-game. Because the only people that is still playing World of Warcraft are the people that literally play nothing else.
They're lifers, right? Man. They're in that game for life. Doesn't matter what the game does. They're going to play it forever.
Dude, these are people that have their PC set to restart and auto-load Battle.net. Because it's the only thing that they have on their PC. There's no Steam. There's no, and genuinely speaking, for anyone that's thinking I'm being facetious, I have met WoW players that when I told them about Steam, they went, "What's Steam?
Can I get it on Battle.net?"
It's like, if it's not on Battle.net, and more specifically, if it's not the WoW tab on Battle.net, it may as well not exist. These are the exact same people who complained when Call of Duty got added to Battle.net because it was like, oh, what the fuck? This is our Battle.net is for World of Warcraft. And it's like, no, actually, Battle.net is for Blizzard and now for Activision. So really not. But anyways, so there was always going to be massive pre-orders.
So let me just ask you one thing, but we're going to jump into the pre-orders. There's just one thing that I've been thinking about. And that is, I'm curious to get your take. Do you think that potentially Blizzard is releasing this early, whether or not they end up delaying it? Let's just assume they will release in 2022. Do you think that one of the reasons they're doing it is so that they don't clash with the same year as the next 14 expansion? It's like, that Realm Reborn, 2013. Heavensward, 2015. Stormblood, 2017. Shadowbringers, 2019. Endwalker was a little bit delayed because usually they release in summer. Endwalker released in December, but 2021. So every 2 years. That means 2023, most likely we're going to see the next 14 expansion. You think Blizzard could be like, well, I don't want to go toe-to-toe against them again? It's like, you think they've been humbled and they're like, no, we got to release it in 2022. We got to have our clear window.
I think there might be some of that. Although I think Blizzard still believes themselves better than FFXIV.
Yes.
They still think they're better.
I was just curious to get your, like, I don't think that is a big influence on them, but, you know, it is curious, like, because everybody's expecting 2023, right? We were all expecting Dragonflight 2033.
Yep.
This is like, no, 2022. And it does make me wonder, like, could it be because of that? Like, I don't think so, because I think that Blizzard still feels like they can throw their weight around. But I don't know. I don't know if they actually can. That's also the interesting part.
No, I don't think Blizzard can anymore. I think that ship has sailed. But I think the biggest reason for Blizzard pushing for 2022 is they can't afford to wait anymore. You know, they've done a season 4, which is the first time in the history of World of Warcraft that there's been a season 4. They've effectively, they have basically lived out Shadowlands to its max. There is no more in this expansion. So if they told people that the next expansion is launching in July of 2023, how many more millions of players quit? Or hundreds of thousands at this point, because I don't think there's millions left to play WoW.
Here's the interesting thing. Considering the people that are currently still playing the game, I don't think any of them would quit.
The thing is,
they're actually asking for a delay. Most of them, they're actually asking for a delay. And don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to them delaying it, but I think that there is a problem with the community when they pre-order a game that was promised to them on 2022 and they actively ask the company to delay it. I think there's just a fundamental problem there. It's like, it's almost like, oh yes, take my money and take your time. And it's like, dude, because like I was watching the Taliesin video yesterday, and by the way, I love watching Taliesin's content. I don't want any animosity or anything like that, because you know I criticize everybody that I don't agree with, so I just want to make that clear. But I like Taliesin's content. But ultimately, Taliesin was talking to his community, and they were saying like, well, I mean, if you guys that pre-ordered, how many of you would be upset if the game is delayed? And almost nobody was upset. Like, how many of you are going to cancel your pre-order if the game's delayed? Almost nobody was going to cancel their pre-orders. Like that, it was just not going to happen. And so even Tally was going like, yeah, I mean, I don't care. I was like, it's whatever. And it's like, you can't just give Blizzard like a free pass to just be like, oh yeah, announce it now, get your money now through pre-orders, and then release it next year. I was like, what? You can't do that.
So the thing that you have to remember is the most recent statistics that I saw is that of an entire gaming community, only 30% partake in online anything. 70% of the player base never speak, never go on forums, never watch YouTube videos, couldn't give a fuck. They play the game, they live their lives. They're not, so you'll never know what they might be thinking. The thing is that those people that are currently playing World of Warcraft are playing World of Warcraft because they're addicted to World of Warcraft. But addiction wears off eventually. Eventually you need bigger and bigger things. Like, it constantly needs to be fresh. So if the game remains stale for the next year, so let's say for the next year there's no new expansion, after a while, even the addicts no longer get their dopamine fix from World of Warcraft because they've done the same thing over and over and over and over again now so many times that the dopamine levels are just no longer spiking. Now, obviously, Dragonflight brings renewed hype, so this carries the game for a few months because now people are logging in, getting ready for the next adventure. But then, if that takes too long, it dips again, which is usually what you'll talk about here is a company overhyped the game too early. And this happens quite a lot with a lot of AAA games, where if the company starts talking about the game too early, the hype rises and it's at its peak, but then after a while it starts falling again. And if you release your game at the bottom of that hype cycle, you're fucked, right? Your pre-order is going to be very low because people were on the high, now they're on the low, and you have to sort of give it time again to reach that peak and slowly pace yourself so that you sell right at the beginning of the next peak, because that's when it just explodes and everyone's just buying it. So World of Warcraft is on a timeline here. They can't push it too long because players will start to leave as they start to get bored with the things in the game. So I feel like that's probably more of the driving force here. And also, I don't think this is rushed. Like, genuinely speaking, I don't think this is rushed. If you look at the amount of content that Shadowlands had, I mean, if you're lucky enough, like myself, to know what Shadowlands was supposed to have, there's a lot of content that was cut from Shadowlands, like a stupid amount of content that was cut. And ultimately, I think this is another case of Warlords of Draenor Legion. Blizzard very early on realized that in order to fix Shadowlands, it would require way too much time and way too much resources, which would mean that the next expansion would be delayed basically indefinitely, right? So instead, let's put all of our effort into making the next expansion great, and let's just keep people kind of happy with Shadowlands. You know, so let's make sure that Shadowlands at least have a couple of expansions, a couple of patches. Let's make sure that there is things for people to do in those patches. But, you know, let's end it there and let's start working. So I actually think they put a lot of effort into Dragonflight, and this is why they can launch in 2022.
Yeah. But in terms of the pre-order stuff, I do have a fundamental problem with people pre-ordering this early on. They don't even have like a release date. And it's like it's one thing if you're someone that like, oh, I want to get the physical collector's edition because those are very limited. And there I'm like, okay, fine. You want to get like a statue or whatever it is that comes with the physical edition. I get it. Go ahead, pre-order that to get the physical goods and whatnot, because most of the price of those is going to be the physical goods of the game. It's barely even like a thing when it comes to that. Whether or not you can agree to the price, that's going to differ from person to person because it's going to be the value that someone puts to a physical item. But the digital, which is obviously a big portion of the current pre-orders that were made, the digital pre-orders, I 1,000% disagree with. And I don't care if it's for an average consumer or, a content creator, because there's the whole thing about, content creators go, it's my job, so I'm just going to go ahead and buy it now. Like I know that Asmon has used that. I think Taliesin has used that as well. And it's just like, that is an argument that I don't agree with, because you could just as easily, after they announce the release date, pre-order it 1 week before the game releases.
Yeah.
The price is not going to change, is it? Do they change? It's like, oh no, 1 week before the game releases, now it's 10 euros more expensive. Does that happen? I don't think that happens. It's like, you can just pre-order it 1 week in advance. Hell, you can pre-order it 1 day in advance. I mean, maybe 2 days so that you can spend 1 whole day preloading it. I don't think you're going to need to do that, but you get the idea, right? So it's like, I just don't think that you need to pre-order it this far in advance. Basically telling Blizzard, oh yeah, here's my money. I don't care if you release it, in the next 2 months or in the next 2 years. And it's like, that just basically promotes the type of behavior that Blizzard has had over the years of just being constantly arrogant, regardless of the quality of their products, which is a problem. Yeah. And again, this is a problem even from a streamer standpoint, because here's the other thing, like particularly if you're doing it live on a live stream and you're telling people, yeah, I pre-order it. And even if you then say, but you shouldn't, it's like, that doesn't matter. People are still going to do it. It's like, there's going to be a bunch of people who's like, oh no, my favorite streamer pre-ordered it. I'm going to pre-order it too. And it's like, I do have a problem with that because that influences future development. It's like, what is the message that this sends to Blizzard? If let's say, for instance, conservative estimate, let's just say that they made like 50 million off of pre-orders. Again, super conservative estimate. I'm pretty sure they made way more.
Yeah.
Well, let's say they just made 50 million off of pre-orders this last week after they announced it. What kind of message does that send? Is like, hey, we didn't even have a product and we already milked these motherfuckers for 50 million, bro. Look at how easy it was. We haven't even made this shit. We have like one zone. It's like, I mean, I don't think that's the case, but imagine them just like actually being like that. It's like, we have like one zone made, dude. 50 million, easy money. It's like, come on, dude. And people are like, well, I'm supporting developers. No, motherfucker, you're supporting Bobby Kotick's next yacht. Let's be real here. Come on, you think this is going to the pocket of the developers? Same developers can't even afford to eat at the Blizzard cantina? Come on.
So, I hate pre-orders in all games.
Yeah.
The only time I pre-order is if it's a game that I know I'm going to cover. And the only time the only game I've actually ever pre-ordered is World of Warcraft and Cyberpunk. I've never pre-ordered anything else in my life. World of Warcraft I've pre-ordered for so long because back in the day, you knew it was going to be good, you know? It was World of Warcraft.
Here's the thing, like, I used to pre-order World of Warcraft back when we had physical editions. I pre-ordered because I'd want to go get the physical edition. But nowadays, we don't even have that. I mean, is there even a physical edition of WoW? I don't think there is anymore. Either way, I haven't been buying.
Yeah, they do have the collector's edition.
No, not besides collectors, because like I'm talking about like back in the day, you used to have not because I'm not going to be spending like friggin'. I couldn't afford just like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy the collector's edition of Wrath of the Lich King. Don't I wish?
I think you still get physical copies. They're rare though, but
yeah, exactly.
I don't even know where in South Africa I would go to buy a physical copy of a fucking video game.
But that's when I used to pre-order and stuff like that. Be like, if it's a physical edition, I want to get it because it's going to come with like a manual or some cool art, some bullshit like that.
Yes.
Then I would pre-order because, you know, those are limited goods. But like a digital edition, there's no reason they're not going to run out of codes. Like,
well,
hey, print some more codes, motherfucker. Let's go. It's like, just press the button, make more.
Technically, they can run out of codes, as Final Fantasy have shown.
No. Final Fantasy didn't run out of codes. They ran out of server space. It's a different thing.
No, they did actually. You go back, Endwalker, at some point, people couldn't pre or buy the game anymore.
Yeah, they couldn't buy the game.
Because they physically ran out of keys.
No, they didn't physically run out of keys.
No, I promise you.
They shut it down because of server capacity.
No. This was before they started shutting it down because the server capacity was getting so bad. They physically ran out of keys. Now, people didn't quite understand what that meant. I mean, it's just a database issue because every key that you have has a slot in the database.
I think that's probably because of their crappy website. Their website's so bad.
I technically speaking, yes, probably there is a chance of that, but I get your point. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. Yeah. The truth is, I think Final Fantasy sorted it out in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like 24 hours later, they had new copies available because it's literally not a limited good. It's just you maybe decided, well,
somebody took a while longer to press the buttons. Just like, press the button, make more codes.
You know, you maybe decided to add 5 million keys to the database. In other words, because this is basically how it works. When you buy the game, you get a physical CD key. That CD key will correlate to a CD key in the database. Yep. And if it doesn't correlate, it means you don't have the fucking game. Now, they're not just going to add infinity, keys to the fucking database. They're effectively going to go, right, we need 6 million. Now you have a slew of people that come buy it. All 6 million is done. There's no more keys left. There's physically no more keys because there's none added. So now you just need someone to basically go, right, add 6 million
press
more.
Press the button.
They add it. And press the button. Let's get some more fucking keys available and everyone can buy it. So I get your point. It's not like a CD with a box and a game, like a game manual or something. Although these days, if you do buy physical copies, I'm thinking it's just the CD key. There's no manuals anymore. People don't really put a lot of effort into those. which is another reason why I wasn't against supporting CD Projekt Red.
You know,
because
I actually bought a while ago. I don't plan on playing it on Switch, but I bought like the Witcher 3 Switch version simply because it was a complete, like, you know, here's your cartridge and the whole game is in the cartridge, and here's a manual, here's some art, here's some goodies. Like, I bought it just because of that, to be like, hey, listen, more of you motherfuckers should do this. Like,
I mean, so here's an interesting thing. The reason CD Projekt Red refuses to use publishers is because their first ever Witcher game, so when Witcher 1 launched, they were using a publisher for the US. In Europe, they basically sent out a map with a manual, as well as like some art, some stickers and stuff like that, with the base edition of the game. The publisher in America refused to put that in the box because it would cost a couple of cents extra, which would mean they'd make less profit. So they effectively, the American version, got none of that goodies. And CD Projekt Red was like, well, fuck that. Because I believe the CEO of CD Projekt Red actually said they do all of that, like put stickers in their game manuals, sometimes even a code for the soundtrack, all of that shit.
Yeah.
And they still make an incredible profit on every single box copy that they sell. Yep. So they don't give a shit about giving crap away. And also, they only had 2 editions. It was the base edition, which is basically the same as most companies' digital collector's edition. And then they had the physical collector's edition, which was like $200. I didn't buy that. I wish I could, but that's a bit rich for my blood. The only collector's edition I have, by the way, is the Shadowlands one, because that got sent to me by Blizzard. It's up there on the fucking, like, no one ever sees it, but it's up there. But okay, back to the philosophical point. I hate pre-orders, but mainly, I don't think it's defeatable. I don't think we can stop it because people have become irrational. The markets are no longer rational. People are no longer thinking clearly about things. You're absolutely correct. Why would you give a company money before they've even shown you anything? Like, I don't even give a fuck about the release date because I don't even like the fact that game companies give release dates. I'm sort of like, tell me a month before that the game is ready and you're going to be launching it.
I completely agree. It's like, to me, maximum should be like 6 months. Maximum. Yeah. Should never be more than 6 months. Like, you announce it, and within the span of the 6 months, you release it. Like, this is one of the reasons why I hate the way Bethesda does things. Like, when was fucking Starfield announced? Like 2016 or some bullshit?
Yeah, like, it was fucking years ago. It's actually longer. It's almost a decade that people have been waiting for Starfield.
It's so fucking ridiculous. Like, what the fuck, dude? And they've been doing that since forever. Like, it's like, come on, man. What the fuck? Oh yeah, The Elder Scrolls 6. I'm gonna be like a grandfather by the time that motherfucker comes out. It's like, what the fuck?
Do you remember, like, this was the biggest schmoz ever. I was watching as Bethesda's Todd Howard stood on the stage and said, "We have something for you." And then the camera goes to the big screen and they show this camera flying over a field of grass and a city in the distance, and then pops up Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That was the entire fucking announcement of Elder Scrolls 6. And it's like, bro, you may as well not have fucking announced shit. Because what you've said is that there's a field of grass in Elder Scrolls 6. That's it. And maybe a city on the hill. Who knows? It's too fucking far away. Like, what are you talking about? This is not an announcement.
People are going to call me a bit of a hypocrite because I just got I just got super hyped recently for Dragon's Dogma 2 because it was confirmed that was in development. But the reason I was hyped about it is like, look, there's always going to be an Elder Scrolls 6 and a 7 and an 8 and a 10 and a 20. Dragon's Dogma, there was no confirmation that that thing was ever coming back. It's like, that was the NVIDIA leak. So it's like, I got excited about that because we didn't know if that was ever going to happen. It's like, Elder Scrolls 6, come on.
I think it's different to get hyped about learning that a certain game is in development.
Yeah.
That's a whole different story. But if you put a segment away so that you can show people a field of fucking grass with the words Elder Scrolls 6 written on top of it. That is bullshit. Like, just confirm it afterwards. Yes, we're also working on... I got super hyped, super fucking hyped when I found out that Mass Effect 4 was in development. Like,
Good God, that was so many years, dude.
I've seen nothing about the game. Like, no cinematics, no shit. I love the fact that it's in development because it tells me at some point I'm going to be in the universe again. And I'm really looking forward to that. The same with Dragon Age 4, right? I'm really looking forward to it. But at least when they showed their cinematic, there was an actual fucking cinematic to show, right? It wasn't just a field of grass. But yeah, I don't care about like dates. I think I agree with you with the 6-month thing. Yeah. Give people enough time to maybe take time off work and shit like that. But by the time you announce it, it should already be ready.
But here's the thing, though.
You're only launching
if they actually released it within 2022, I mean, they didn't announce it. I mean, they're announcing their release date, whatever. But it is like within 6 months, and it's not. It's actually not that long. When did they announce Dragonflight? It was a couple of months ago, right? Like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, it was about. Yeah, it was about 3 months ago.
It's actually not that bad for this one, but you know, still.
No, it is.
I just still don't like the idea of so many people just throwing money at them, and then on top of it, going to the point of being like, oh yeah, but you can delay it to 2023. Is like, no, I don't think that's okay at all. I think that, like, listen, obviously, if it's going to be the difference between, you know, it being a good game and it being a bad game, of course I prefer if you release 2023. But I think that if you're brazen enough to announce that you're, you know, releasing it on 2022, then fucking release it on 2022. Otherwise, don't fucking announce it. Like, what the hell?
The funny thing is that you can't actually legally, and this is all thanks to Europe, schedule a pre-order without a date. That's the problem.
They just wanted to get some pre-order money.
Yeah, the European Union will fucking rake you if you say pre-order now. When do you launch? You know,
one of these days.
The European Union will be like, yeah, sure. We'll make the pre-orders available the second you tell us when the game's going to be available, right? So the European Union would have blocked that. So they had to put that in there. The European Union is less phased when a game company comes out and says, oh, by the way, we're going to delay it a little bit. You know, sorry, oops. Because again, I think the law suggests that you have to at least let people know in a reasonable amount of time beforehand that it is going to be delayed. So if Blizzard comes at the beginning of December and says, oh, by the way, we're not going to be able to launch this month or this year, we're going to launch next year, March. That's fine. That's legally fine. So they've just covered their bases with it. What I dislike is that people will pre-order without having seen anything. Remember, the game is an alpha at this point, meaning it's closed. No one has seen anything about this game yet. We've seen none of the world. We've not been able to walk in the world. There's not a single reviewer that's had their hands on this game that can tell people that, oh, it's actually pretty good. And people are going, yeah, take my money.
So here's another interesting thing while you're talking about the alpha and betas and stuff like that. I was actually thinking, could it be that Blizzard is just like, hey, we actually have I mean, I know that this is very, how should I put this? This is like La La Land. This is me going to complete copium/hopium land. Could it be that Blizzard's just like, oh no, we actually have an internal QA team now. They already tested out the games. I know it's just a completely laughable concept. Being like, what do you mean the players aren't the ones who are going to test the games? What? It's like, but wouldn't it be cool? Like, this is again just like Mega Dreamland. Wouldn't it be cool if what people go to test out on the alpha is just like, hey, you can test out these abilities. Maybe you can do like one dungeon, something like that. And you can't see any of the quest lines. You can't see any of the actual content that we have for you. It's just like, hey, test out the classes, maybe play around with the talent trees, whatever. Go to town, do some PvP, do some combat with these things, and now you're done, and that's it.
I would love that. I would love if the PTR, the beta, was an actual beta. In other words, here's a portion of what you're going to see in the final game. Taste this.
And that portion cannot contain story.
No story, no nothing. Maybe 1-2 dungeons. The 2 dungeons basically being chosen to highlight different scenarios. So maybe you take one dungeon with a lot of single target and another dungeon with a lot of AoE. And
even the dungeons shouldn't be complete. Like the first 2 bosses and then stop or something like that.
Yeah. First 2 bosses, maybe extra mobs.
Yeah.
Because you can fucking game those, right? So you put in extra mobs to see how all the classes handle AoE. Maybe you put in, make one of the bosses really difficult like you do with raiding. Just because you want to see how the single target plays out, how people are interacting with some of the skills and abilities. And then for raids, again, do a couple of the bosses there. Take like the bosses that have the most unique skills just to see that really works. Because ultimately, what do you need in order to taste the raid? Well, you need one team within the company that can actually clear the raid on Mythic. If they manage to clear the raid on Mythic, it's a good bet that everyone should be able to clear the raid on Mythic.
Yeah.
That's what Final Fantasy does, and it does very well. Yes, all games are going to have bugs, and I can forgive bugs. What I don't like is when you've done a 6-month beta, and then there's bugs. Because it's like, well, the fuck, dude? You had hundreds of thousands of people tasting this, more than any other company has in QA, because most QA departments is about 500 to 1,000 people. Blizzard gets the option of hundreds of thousands of people tasting it, and it still has bugs. There's no fucking chance, like no dice. The only way that can happen is if you didn't really fucking pay attention to the tasting, right? The feedback you didn't pay attention to. And also, I don't know if you saw the most recent news coming out of CD Projekt Red. There was a whistleblower inside the company that did the QA tasting for Cyberpunk 2077 that released a 78-page document that basically showed that the company that was hired to do the Q&A tasting for CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk 2077 just didn't really taste the game. The people that were on the QA team was like less than half of the team that the company told CD Projekt Red is going to be testing it. And it was also all junior people. Like there was not a single senior QA tester on the team. Oh my
God.
And the company had a daily quota of bugs. So every single tester had to submit X amount of bugs every single day. So what these guys would do is basically just submit anything. They wouldn't even go look for the bugs because that could take too long. So they would basically just go, everyone basically just submit the same bugs over and over again. And this is an internal document that came from the company that handled the QA testing. So the guy who made the video, Upper Echelon Gaming, basically he got his hands on the document and he said this effectively vindicates a lot of what CD Projekt Red went through, because CD Projekt Red said that a lot of the bugs weren't caught during QA. And people said, bullshit, fucking bullshit. You were just money-grabbing bastards that just wanted to push the game out. And this document seems to confirm that that's the case. So, World of Warcraft, I know they've hired a couple of QA people. So maybe they are upping the QA stuff.
It's like it would at the end of the day, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people, like I myself am among the people that's like, oh, come on, man, you guys have just been fucking up nonstop. But at the end of the day, the reason I keep doing videos and talking about it is like, I want to be able to play the IPs that I kind of like grew up with, and I want to be able to have a good time. It's just like, that has not happened in Shadowlands. That has not happened in BFA with the World of Warcraft IP. That is not happening in Diablo Immortal with the Diablo IP because it's a piece of shit. And it's just they completely canned StarCraft. I mean, when's the next StarCraft game coming out? Never. They've destroyed Heroes of the Storm, which was a game that I was also interested in. They completely pretty much, I mean, they haven't destroyed it. The game still runs and whatnot, but they kind of killed the whole scene behind that game and stopped investing in it almost. So it's like a lot of the IP that I care about is just getting smashed to shit. And I just want to be able to play those IP and be happy about it. Because a lot of people are like, oh, there's other games. And like, well, yeah, I get it. I play 14. I think 14 is a much better game than World of Warcraft is. That doesn't mean that I still don't miss World of Warcraft. That's the thing.
I think at the end of the day, I'm right there with you. I mean, you go over to my main channel. I'm making videos about the lore of Final Fantasy, of World of Warcraft. But I'm playing Final Fantasy, you know? And I want to play WoW again. I miss WoW. Because I think there are things that World of Warcraft does incredibly well that Final Fantasy will just never do that well. Because Final Fantasy
because
they know what to do those things.
They know what they excel at, and they pick and choose their battles.
Exactly. It would be like me telling Rurikhan here, Cyberpunk is just a much better game than Monster Hunter. Exactly. How can you compare the two they're literally not the same thing, and yet why would I? Like, Rurikhan would probably just be like, yeah, okay, cool.
Sure.
If you're talking about RPG, sure, but Monster Hunter isn't an RPG, so,
even though it won the award of best RPG back in 2018, I was just like, but this is not an RPG. What is wrong with you?
I mean, the term RPG have gotten so mangled.
Yeah.
These days, the only real RPGs that still exist is CRPG.
Yeah.
Outside of that, almost any game. Like Cyberpunk is also not really an RPG. But because you can technically role play, it becomes a role playing game. Yeah. But yeah, so comparing Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft, in my opinion, would be the same as comparing Cyberpunk and Monster Hunter. Sure, both are games, but they're not the same fucking game.
I think that there are some points that you can compare in those two games, but I think that there are definitely, what I would say is that there are things that one game excels at and that the other one doesn't. And that game trying to chase the thing that the other one is doing is potentially not a good thing. Because, for instance, you got 14, when they started, they tried doing raids like World of Warcraft, and very quickly they were like, no, we're not doing this. We're doing different raids. Our raids are different. We just have a different, the way that we do things is different. And World of Warcraft is going the other way. I was like, we're going to do story like 14, and let's just hope that they've learned. Actually, that's not what people come to World of Warcraft for. So it's like, they don't want to be like the main character of World of Warcraft. They just want to be a character in the world, and that's what World of Warcraft used to excel at.
I would say the best way to describe these would be Wizards of the Coast versus Workshop Games, right? Wizards of the Coast is the Baldur's Gate Neverwinter Nights guys, famous for it. And then Workshop is the Warhammer and Warhammer 40k guys.
Yeah.
These are technically the same thing. It's tabletop video games, right? It's Dungeons and Dragons, it's Warhammer, it's all that shit. But they're not the same. With Dungeons and Dragons, you get a lot of individual stories, a lot of individual crafting of the world. They take a lot of care with even the video games, that the video games adhere to the exact lore of their world, because their world is very narrative, and the narrative is very important. Warhammer is far more sort of obsessed with the building of a world, right? And the world building element of it. This is World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is the Wizards of the Coast of the tabletop genre. World of Warcraft is the Warhammer of the tabletop genre. And if Warhammer started doing what Wizards of the Coast were doing, I feel like Warhammer fans would not enjoy it as much.
Probably not. Yeah.
Because the whole thing, if you go to Warhammer, the amount of fucking speculation on YouTube within the Warhammer universe, because so much is just not explained. It's just sort of there, but no one really knows what it is. So it's up to us to fill in the blanks. That's what makes World of Warcraft unique in its storytelling, is those blank moments where we can sort of sit and talk to our friends on Discord about what we think this means. In Final Fantasy, it's more, this is a story, this is a movie, this is a book, and you want to see everything in it. It's what makes it special, because it's a fundamentally brilliant story told brilliantly. And the two are not comparable to one another, and they shouldn't try to be. Yeah. It's fine if they're different. I love the storylines for Final Fantasy XIV. I love the quest design in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't want that for WoW.
Yeah,
WoW,
I don't want that either for WoW.
I kind of like in WoW just getting a quest to kill 10 things and go off and kill my 10 things and fucking rush to max, and the world is its own little story and its own little thing. I like that. I don't want that to change.
I'm not sure about the kill 10 things. I think that they could do more interesting quests, but not necessarily like, oh, let's have this full cinematic experience with facial expressions and whatnot. I think that's 14's thing, but I do feel that WoW could do some more interesting quests, but not necessarily, like 14, just different. But yeah.
The reason I say kill 10 things is basically it can't be too involved.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit there for 5 minutes and follow a conversation in WoW. I don't give a fuck. Just give me the brief overview. Tell me what's going on here so that I can go off and kill stuff and get back and continue.
It's the journal, man. We need that journal that we're talking about. They got to do the Adventurer's Journal.
That journal would be so fucking cool, man. That journal would be so fucking cool.
Adventurer's Journal. Blizzard, that's patented, by the way. We expect a big fat paycheck if you end up using that idea. We're patenting it, the Adventurer's Journal.
I don't think they will. I wonder if Steve Denuser and his team is going to be able to pull off.
Dude, they're listening to this podcast right now. They're taking notes.
I really hope that they are. Not just this podcast, but I hope that Steve Denuser is paying attention to, if not my lore videos, then Balila, even Noble. Platinum WoW. These are all channels that do a lot of speculation around the lore. And I think if they were to just at least look at what the community loves, it would give them an idea of where to go. Rather than this flailing around in the dark, not really sure where the story should go. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if they were to watch a bit more podcasts and a bit more content creators, because content creators really is just conduits. People love to think of a content creator as sort of, oh yeah, you guys are just content creators. Well, content creators are nothing without their community, like nothing. You remove the viewers, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
And content creators attract communities around their own views that agree with their views. So if there is a content creator that is getting views, it means that there are players that agree with these views.
And there's an interesting concept there, which is like a lot of times people will look at criticism of World of Warcraft and they'll be like, oh, you're just a hater. You just want to hate on the game and whatnot. And it's like, why does everybody take that to be a negative thing? Because someone who still cares enough to like either write forum posts or do videos or whatever to do criticism on the game, that is someone who is still passionate about the game. And you can maybe say, oh, but I don't like that type of feedback, whatever. Yes, but this is a person who's still passionate about the game. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Like even yesterday I was streaming Monster Hunter and people were telling me like, oh, how do you feel about people that were so critical of Rise and stuff like that? I was like, that's a good thing. It means that there's a lot of people that maybe, they didn't like Monster Hunter Rise very much, but at least they were passionate enough to voice their opinion. The worst thing that you can have is indifference. Like, for instance, in my case, like I voiced my opinion like 2 or 3 times on Lost Ark. Never talked about it again. Guess why? Because I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck what that game does because it's pay to win as fuck and I don't want to waste my time on it. So I just I completely wrote it off, never talked about, I mean, every now and then I'll bring it up when people are talking about pay to win and arguments like that, but I don't care. Whereas World of Warcraft, I still do care to an extent, which is why we talk about this. It's the same thing with Diablo. I care. That's why I still talk about Diablo Immortal as well, which by the way, nice segue, because speaking about flailing in the dark earlier, that's what Accolonn's going to be doing pretty soon, because he's about to run out of electricity with load shedding and whatnot. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Winnie the Pooh basically saying, no Diablo Immortal in China. Like there's a big smile on my face going like, oh, that's the market you guys are going to milk the hardest, was the Chinese market? And y'all just got completely cucked out of it? Oh, man, I'm so sad.
So I saw you cover it, but I haven't had time to. I've been super busy. So why did Winnie the Pooh decide no?
So here's the interesting thing, right? When I did that video, it was confirmed delayed. It was delayed. Right now, It's apparently an actual ban. So the news has actually evolved. And, there was speculation. Bellular had made some research and stuff, and he was speculating that was potentially because their Weibo account, Weibo, I don't know, whatever, the Chinese version of Twitter, basically. Their Weibo account apparently tweeted something very nasty about President Jinping, whatever his name is, the guy that it was something about when is the bear falling from his chair or something like that. And at this point, people are not sure if this was intentionally tweeted from the official account or if this was someone that wanted to make this tweet on a personal account and was logged into the wrong account because they were a community manager or something like that. So there's no official confirmation as to why, but that tweet did exist. Someone screenshotted it, and it's just straight up the Diablo logo, and it just says that stuff in Chinese.
Fuck, that's harsh.
So they got completely screwed over there. And it's people are saying that potentially Blizzard will change the partner that they're working with to publish it over there or something like that. We don't know. But apparently NetEase has a 3-year ban from publishing video games now. Or so. It's something completely wild. I myself don't know all of the details because I'm just super happy about it due to the fact that that this was going to be a huge cash cow for them in the Chinese market. And now Blizzard has to kind of come crawling back to their Western audience, eat a big slice of humble pie.
To be fair, I think that might be why Blizzard ultimately apologized. I don't know if you saw the video. Asmongold reacted to it 2 days ago or something.
The video from Rax or whatever, the guy who wrote,
spoke to Wyatt Chang. And Wyatt Chang effectively said, we've made some mistakes. We went too far with certain things. We are looking into changing certain things. And, I think that's why Blizzard is doing it. Because for Blizzard, the outcry and outrage
they don't give a crap
from the Western audience doesn't fucking matter. If we were to put all of the gamers in the West together, we are dwarfed by the gamers in China. That is a massive market, and that market is ever growing. So they were sort of going, these guys can fucking QQ as much as they want. We're going to launch in China. We're going to be rich, boys.
Yeah. And now they're not launching in China.
But here's here's why I don't understand Western companies. They're all clamoring for the Chinese markets, right? Every single gaming company is doing their utmost to get into the Chinese markets. The funny thing is, your entire existence there relies on a government in a good mood. If the government turns around and says, fuck you, you're fucked. Just like that, Winnie the Pooh turns around and says, right, for the next 3 years, you guys can't publish any games. And it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that a lot of people are going to lose their jobs because most publishing houses don't have the money to just continuously not release anything.
Yep.
So a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. A lot of Western companies are fucked. Anyone that has any sort of notion of working with NetEase is completely screwed. Blizzard is in a contract with NetEase, so they're going to have to figure out a way. Either NetEase lets them out of the contract, or they're probably going to have to sue NetEase to get out of the contract. And ultimately, why would you do that? Why would you pin all of your hopes on a country where the regime have shown itself to just not give a fuck about business? It doesn't care.
I think one of the most disgusting things about the whole situation is kind of how Blizzard ends up treating the community that put them where they are, which is ultimately the people that were over at that BlizzCon in 2018 that they were oh, don't you guys have phones? Y'all have phones. It's those are the people who put them where they are. And Blizzard's just nah, man, we're looking at that sweet Chinese moolah. It's again, it's that whole thing about it's not enough to make a lot of money. They need to make all the money because you could keep being a proper company and just develop for your Western audience and, sure, port stuff over, from the games that you are working on from your Western audience, port it over to China, go get your money there too. But you don't need to put all your chips in that market. Like, why can't you just keep developing things properly and you would have had a much more solid... They would be making more money. Like, actually think about it like this. They would be making more money right now if they had just kept developing games with the quality that they had been developing like 8 years ago. They would be making more money right now.
Yeah, but remember, good games require a lot of effort.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a good game, you need a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's easier to just do less work and more money.
But
by going to markets that don't expect a lot of work to go into.
But think of it like this: like the people that left Blizzard, did they go and change to a different industry? No, they went to like whatever Dreamhaven. And they started doing essentially the same kind of projects they were already doing at Blizzard.
Yeah.
So it's like if Blizzard had simply greenlit these projects, because clearly these people were not burned out. Because if you're burned out, you don't like, oh man, I'm so burned out of creating content. I guess I'm going to go over to a new platform and make more content. That's not how it goes.
Yeah.
And this is literally what the developers did. The developers, they left Blizzard and they went to work on more video game stuff. Most of them, at least. So it's like, if Blizzard had simply greenlit these projects instead of been salivating over the Chinese market, it would be in such a better position right now. Like, they would have a better public image. They would have better video games. Their community would still be behind them. Like, they're just, the advantages are beyond imagining. But no, it's like, no, we're going to burn everybody. We're going to burn all the bridges. And holy shit, we even burned the China bridge now. Guess we come crawling back to the Western fans.
I think they've realized that there's more money to be made in the small percentage of players that is addicted to the game. And that you and me and everyone else don't really matter. And then it started coming, like, that was the bet. They were hedging their bets on the idea that we don't matter. And then they started to realize, oh shit, maybe they matter a little. You know, especially after the lawsuits with the thousands upon thousands of people that quit. I think that's when Blizzard realized, fuck. Okay, so these other fucks that basically want good games, you know, these killjoys that want us to work for our money, they kind of matter, you know, so maybe we should give them at least something. This is where I think Diablo 4 comes in and where I think World of Warcraft Dragonflight comes in. It is that attempt to try and regain a lot of the lost players, to bring them back into the fold, bring them back into the old Blizzard is back, you know, idea. While also, and this was the hope, is that their mobile games can go do the fleecing that their other games can't do. And now with China banning it, it's like, fuck. You know, we can't even fleece with mobile games because, you know, the West has money, but a lot of people in the West don't pay as much as the Chinese. So it's kind of like, fuck me, we're screwed. You know, man. So we'll have to wait and see. It is fun to see this happening to Blizzard because they deserve it.
They do. They 1,000% do.
Yeah. So I'm also enjoying the fact that it is happening. I would have enjoyed it more if China banned it because it was so
disgusting.
You know, that would have been amazing if China was like.
You mean like my title kind of alluded to?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the clickbait, baby.
Oh yeah, you gotta get the fucking clickbait out there.
You gotta get it, just a little bit of clickbait, not too much, just a little bit. But it made for a really good title. Though. You gotta admit, it's like not even China wants your bullshit.
I mean, my video, the thumbnail for my video on the player that spent 600 million gold in World of Warcraft was literally just my face, the Diablo Immortal picture on the side, and then literally 600M.
Yeah, dude, I saw that. I was like, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah. And yeah, sure. A lot of people clicked on that video and they were like, wait, someone spent $600 million? And then they find out, because
it's wild
nothing
gold.
about that is lying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I'm not lying. There is a 600 million in there. But 600M sounds a lot worse than 50K. You know? So yeah, that was sort of that's the clickbait. That's the level that you have to go to. Sadly, these days.
Nowadays on YouTube,
on YouTube.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, we're going to wrap it up here because Accolonn's about to run out of juice. They're going to load shed and kill his electricity. So before we completely shut down midway through the podcast, we're going to be calling it here. If you guys enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification, icon, all this stuff. There is links to Accolon stuff in the description below. Make sure to check him out as well. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong. Stay safe. Peace out.
Peace.